Meanwhile, talks in Geneva on the world's first treaty to curb plastic pollution are close to collapse. Countries remain divided over whether to limit the production of newly made plastics and regulate hazardous chemicals. The final day began in crisis after key measures on the full life cycle of plastics were removed from the draft. Oil-producing nations are resisting any limits on output. Negotiators warn the three-year effort could fail without a last-minute breakthrough. Experts warn plastic production will triple by 2060 without urgent action. DW climate reporter Tim Schoenberg is following the talks on combating plastic pollution in Geneva. For us, Tim, final day of the sixth round of talks and still no agreement. What's the holdup?
Yeah, well, the holdup here is that what's on the table at the moment, the current draft, is actually less substantial than what we have seen when we came into these negotiations. And that's obviously very frustrating for ambitious countries and very, well, let's say, agreeable to for those who do not want a very ambitious a treaty here. We still see maximalist positions in both camps, and this will not lead to any treaty. This will not lead to a consensus, which is the mechanism parties have to agree on here. And basically, we've seen the plenary last night. There were words falling like unacceptable. This is red lines crossed everywhere. So we're basically somehow in a deadlock here, and I mean, these negotiations are already in extra time. Parties wanted to conclude last year, and looking at where we're at, the picture looks rather grim for an ambitious plastic treaty.
Can you walk us through the different interests at play here? I mean, who wants what and why?
Well, the main two blocks are fossil fuel producing countries around Saudi Arabia, Iran, Russia, but also more and more the US, which want to avoid any reduction in production of plastics, which is the main and most effective lever to reduce plastic pollution. This is scientifically proved that this would be necessary to get a grip on plastic. And the other camp is more ambitious countries, which basically they want not only to tackle the production of plastics, but also have a regulation on hazardous chemicals which are associated with the production. They want also to tackle the waste streams, etc., etc. But when we look at the more ambitious countries, which are over 100, even there are divided positions. Looking at, for example, the EU and Germany, I talked to the delegation here, and of course they want more ambition in the treaty, but they did not mention, for example, getting regulation on hazardous chemicals, more transparency, a register in these fields, which would also be necessary according to science. And there's at least the question among ambitious countries why that is. Germany is the biggest plastic producer in the EU and has a global chemistry industry. So there is a mosaic of interests here, and many people would expect more ambition even from the ambitious coalition here.
We'll leave it there for the moment. DW climate reporter Tim Schoenberg reporting from Geneva. Thanks so much. Now, Indonesia is one country that's become a dumping ground for thousands of tons of plastic and other waste, despite laws that ban its import. This international waste trade comes at the cost of Indonesia's environment and its public health. DW's Sinta Zanidia visited some of the mountains of trash in Karawang and Jakarta.
This building isn't on fire. It's a chalk production site where smoke billows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. What's fueling the everlasting fire it needs? Trash.
We use all the unused waste, like old rubber, basically anything that can be burned. We usually need around 2 to 3 trucks, at least 6 tons of trash per burning round.
Aceh runs this factory in Karawang, West Java. He tells us he buys unrecycled trash from traders every day. He knows burning it like this is controversial, which is why he doesn't want to give us his full name. Among the trash, we found all sorts of materials, including packaging from abroad and stuff that has been shredded for recycling. The same is likely true in many such factories in Indonesia. This is the kind of place that trash comes from. Nestled in the green fields of Banten province, a plastic mountain. Waste pickers find what they can sell. Most of it has been shredded, meaning it's been processed for recycling, and yet it's ended up here.
What you see here are mountains of unrecycled shredded plastic from the industry. Now, while we cannot account for every single plastic that is being dumped here, we can tell that most of them do not even come from Indonesia.
Figures from the Indonesia Central Statistics Agency show the country imported 258,000 tons of polymer waste in 2024. The idea is to produce plastic pallets or other products that can be reused. In January, the Environment Ministry banned waste imports due to concerns of whether the nation's overburdened waste management system could cope. But the imports barely slowed. The statistics agency says about 108,000 tons of plastic waste entered in the first half of the year. The industry ministry still permits plastic scrap imports if they're labeled as recycling raw material. Raw material which Indonesia needs and cannot produce itself. Muhammad Khalid is a professor in polymer technology and works for the Indonesia Olefin, Aromatic and Plastic Industry Association.
With a waste management system that's still lacking in Indonesia, the quality of waste produced generally does not meet the requirements to be used as raw material for the industry that's importing plastic waste.
But there is little to no proper treatment for what is left over, says Professor Khalid.
What we see in Indonesia is that most incinerator machines are still very conventional. As a result, the burning process produces smoke and even dangerous substances such as dioxides and carbon monoxide.
Nisa is a researcher at Nexus 3, an NGO focused on environmental and health issues. They say the fate of imported plastic is something which should concern people whose trash it originally was.
Public has to hold their governments accountable, because the government says that, oh yeah, we have probably like 80% or 95% recycling rate in the countries, right? But then they don't know behind the scenes that those countries are sending this waste into our country, developing countries.
The chalk factory and its everlasting fire stands as a constant reminder of Indonesia's waste management crisis.